With mortgage defaults on the rise, Canadian real estate buyers are being lured to Palm Desert and Vegas to find bargain condos or single-family homes, even though Canuck fever has hit us all. Peter Kinch and Don Campbell are two real estate experts who write books and educate buyers and sellers of residential and commercial properties. They are also hockey fans, as you can see soon. It is my pleasure to welcome Peter Kinch and Don Campbell back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Great to be here, Fanny. Thank you very much.
Well,
It's fantastic to be here.
I bet it is, but I'm looking at the B on that jersey and the black and the gold and thinking, how did you get here safely?
Not right. Yeah.
Something
well, I wore a
isn't
jacket
right.
over it coming in at through the lobby. I made sure I didn't have this visible.
And are you a Bruins fan in your heart?
Okay.
In your soul?
Okay. Now here's where we get
Truth.
to the truth. I was born and raised a Bruins fan. My earliest memory was 1969-70, Bobby Orr scoring the winning goal, and who couldn't love Bobby Orr growing up? But you know, the funny thing is, being a fan in the 70s, I mean, a lot of us, Vancouver just came into the 70s, a lot of us had original 6 teams that were our favorites, and you talk to any Canuck fan that's our age, and everybody has a second team. But here's the scoop. I got to be honest with you. You know, I went through the heartache of the Bruins losing to Montreal all those years, and then I got married, had children, and guess what? I watched the Canucks every day with my son, and you know, after all these years of being Bruins fans, I love seeing them in the finals. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, my heart is with Vancouver. I'm hoping Vancouver wins. So, on that note, for Don's sake, I'm going to take off the Bruins jersey, shed the past of what I used to believe, and revert to what is currently true, which is being a Canucks fan.
Yay! Look at
This is actually.
So there you go.
Well, just throw that away.
Well, we won't throw it away.
Well,
we'll save it for
It's Brad Park, isn't it?
It's
Who's on
Brad
the
Park.
back?
So you know.
Okay.
It's a wonderful.
And it's
throw it away.
signed. Okay, don't throw it away. Just
It's a wonderful allegory for real estate investors too, because you know what we used to believe in the past, or what we learned from our uncle back in the 70s and the 80s. You know, beware of the high interest rates and all that stuff. Is we have to shed that. We have to get to what's real today and what the changes in the demographic, as your previous guest was talking about,
Yes.
the move of the population.
sure. And the boomers aging and downsizing and coming to the
Yes.
cities and all of that. So,
coming to new realizations.
like you
Like you just did.
Like I
You
just
see?
did.
We're not atomic scientists here, but I get it. Okay, so today, real estate. More lock in, don't lock in, variable rates, what to do.
Well, it was a very
Mortgages.
interesting that the CIBC came out, was it about a month ago, that said, you know, the interest rates will go up in July, et cetera. And one of the reasons that I like to hang out with Peter is that he has some extra insights. He came out and he said on our stage at the Real Estate Investment Network, he said, you know what, they are not going to go up. And as a matter of fact, they probably won't go up till September. And guess what happened? This last one, they didn't go up. So congratulations to Peter.
Well, it was interesting. If you look at it, we just had yesterday the announcement the Bank of Canada decided
Right.
there was going to be no change. What's
Right.
interesting, Fanny, is look at the rhetoric and the language. The next rate updates are going to be July 19th, then September, then October. So if we ask ourselves, what is the reason? What's the motivation behind the Bank of Canada raising rates or lowering rates? Well, they raise rates to cool off inflation. Well, clearly, when the election was happening in April, they stood on the sidelines. So everybody knew they weren't going to do anything yesterday, but what we really were looking for was signals as to when they would raise rates. And at the end of the day, the summer months, July, the summer market will have its own slowing effect. We all go on holidays. Our
Yes.
economy slows down by nature. So there was no need to compound it by putting on an additional rate hike on top of an already slowing summer market.
Yeah.
So based on the rhetoric we heard yesterday, it would indicate that we won't see a rate increase until September, October. And one of the BMO economists actually suggested may not even see the Bank of Canada make a move until 2012.
So to answer your
January.
question, a long way to get around to go
Right.
variable.
Go variable.
Go variable, go variable, go variable. But what you should do if you're going to go variable is pay the equivalent payment as if you were locking that mortgage in. So if you're locking it in, it's going to be $200 or $300 more a month for the exact same mortgage. So budget, start paying that extra couple of $100 a month, the difference between locked in and fixed, locked in and variable.
Sure.
And guess what? That money you're paying yourself, you're not paying the bank. The banks will be fine without you paying them. I think they'll do profit.
But one of you told me, I think, a while ago that if you can't sleep at night because you've gone variable, go ahead and lock in. You know, I mean, if you're losing sleep over it, you're just not the type that can
weather the storm
weather the storm, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. How did you two meet? How did you come together?
Well, I was presenting some of our research. Actually, it was in Richmond, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
Boy, that was a long time ago.
2003 or 2004.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And I was presenting, and I was talking about how to deal with a bank and how to deal with brokers and how to play this game legitimately, because there's a lot of things that get taught out there how to skirt the system. And I'm saying, no, just play the cards properly. All of a sudden, I hear in the back of the room, "Preach it, sister."
Actually, I said brother. I did say preach it, brother.
And then
well, that's good. So we don't have any gender issues.
That's exactly right.
So you met, and you've collaborated on 2 books only, the 97 Tips.
So far, yep.
And
he has his
the
own book.
Action Plan,
Yeah.
the Canadian Real Estate Action Plan, but you're forwarded.
I'm just the forward. Pete put all the work into that one.
You're really a center, I thought.
Oh, well, there you go. That's right.
Okay, so is it a good time to buy a home in Canada right now, to buy a condo in Canada, in British Columbia? What?
Well, if you don't mind,
Buyer's
I'll
market?
start with this
Absolutely.
one. There is no such thing as a Canadian real estate market, you know, because that's the equivalent of taking the temperature of everybody in the hospital. The average is 100, and that means everybody has a fever. The truth is, it's a great time to be buying real estate in certain markets across the country where the job growth is occurring, where the population growth is occurring. It has nothing to do with the housing market. It has everything to do with the underlying fundamentals.
Okay, and that would be?
Well, if I was to be buying in the Lower Mainland, I would be buying in Surrey, or I would be buying in Maple Ridge. Those would be my 2 hottest markets. And in Canada, where you've got some indication that Edmonton and Calgary are incredibly hot.
Calgary, and there's pockets of Toronto. But you know, I come at it from a bit of a different perspective there. And again, I'm the guy who ends up financing a lot of people's dreams and visions and goals.
Right.
I always look at it from a personal perspective. Is now a good time to buy in Canada? Rather than look in the market, I look at the individual. And so what's right for you? What's your goals? What are you looking to accomplish? Where are you at in your stage of life? So that's what makes Don and I a good complement, because he'll analyze the markets, I analyze individuals' portfolios and say what's right for you and what, based on your current reality, plus taking into consideration what your long-term goals are, what's your best next step?
But you're both on the investment page, not the speculation page, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. They're lining up around the block to buy a property, or the throwing money at Phoenix when the job market just collapsed there again last month, and doing that's pure gambling. You might as well go to Vegas, put it all on red or black, and hope for the best.
But it is tempting, as you know, if you can get a major event home in Vegas for 200 grand that used to be 700,000.
Well, there's the operative
US.
word. Used to be, and every time I talk to somebody, they say, "I'm saving so much money because it used to be this price, now it's this price."
Right.
Time out. You
I know.
Yeah.
May still be that price in 10 years. You don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're predicting another 7 to 12% drop in a lot of those cities at the same time as the American dollar dropping. So you're going in there in 2 downward pressure points. And just because it's cheap, you know, never ever buy a property because it's cheap. Buy a property because it has a future. Buy a shirt or buy a coffee that's cheap if you want, but don't buy an investment.
And what are the check points for future? A property that has a future. Location, location, location.
Well, location is a great start, but how do you decide what the location is? And that is job growth, economic growth, people moving into the region, and preferably, and this is not ageist, but preferably a younger family component moving into that region, because then they will be spending money and their incomes will be increasing over the next 10, 12, 14 years, and that supports a real estate market.
Okay.
And Fanny, one of the things I've learned is that people will often make a purchase because whenever you hear this, well, I've got it at this price, well then subconsciously they're thinking then I'm going to flip it or sell it at this price. That's immediately when you know they're speculating. Because none of us can control what happens to the value in the future. You know what? You take your best bet, but you don't know. But here's what I do know. I do know if I buy something that has a strong GDP, good economic growth, good economic fundamentals that Don shares in the book, then you know what? I know that I'm going to have a tenant base. And regardless of what happens to that value over time, my tenant's going to pay down my mortgage, and I'm going to be debt-free on that property.
Okay,
and if
so-
the market gives me a blessing and gives me an upside, fantastic.
Scenario, you're living in a single-family dwelling, nice little house.
Yep.
Perhaps you own it, probably you own it by now if you're a boomer. And you're thinking of one day living downtown in the condo. What should you do? Sell the house and buy the condo and call it a day, or buy the condo while you're still in the house?
Well,
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it depends on
when you're still working, you're in the house, you think, well, one day I want to live downtown, so why not buy the condo now? And
I would
mortgage the house or something like that.
I would look at that. I would look at that strategy, but only if the rent that you could achieve from that condo, because you don't want to just buy an empty box and pay condo fees and
No,
mortgages, et cetera, payments. If the rent will cover all of your costs, and you know that that's eventually where you're going to go, so rent it out. And then just understand that when you move in 5, 7, 10 years from now, that you do a beautiful renovation.
Right.
But buying a property and just hoping that it's going to go up, or I just want to buy it and sit on it in this market, I think it's a fool's game.
Is it?
Yeah.
So you moved to the condo. Do you keep the house if you can afford to? Do you see what I mean? And rent the house? Because it would seem to me the house would go up more than the condo. True, not true?
Well, Pete, in your action plan, you analyze that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, again, risk of sounding repetitive, it goes back to what your goals are, what's your plan, what's your current economic status. And you know, it's really not a catch-all for everybody. No. It's an individual plan that has to be catered to. You know, one of my favorite stories, my wife's from Penticton. She loves the Okanagan, and here I was buying investment properties in Edmonton. I remember going there one summer. She goes, why are we spending money in Edmonton? I want to live here. I want to live in the Okanagan when we retire type thing. And so I did some math. It was really interesting. I analyzed buying a house in the Okanagan, Lakeview, and all that, and then what I would get or not get, more importantly, on rent. And at the end of the day, my money was better spent in Alberta. I could take the profits from Alberta because it's cash flowing and rent out the most beautiful lakefront home I could have.
So you buy a little property in a nice burb in Edmonton.
Or Surrey,
and rent it, or Surrey, or Maple Ridge.
Yeah, that was just our example. Yeah.
Okay, and rent it.
Yep.
And then when you want to buy your recreational property, your retirement home, you sell that one.
Take that dough.
Take that dough.
Pay the taxes on it. Go buy something free and clear where you want to live.
Okay.
That's if you can't buy, like if you're living in the suburbs of Vancouver and you want to own a condo down in Cole Harbour here, if you can find one that is a deal that's going to carry itself with rent, why not buy it now, have that mortgage slowly paid off by your tenant? And that's a wonderful way to do it.
Well, it certainly makes sense, but it also makes sense to me a little bit if you're a boomer to go to Palm Desert and get that little spot.
Sure, if that's what your goal is, and that's where you're going to end up for 6 months of the year or something, why not wait till it's even cheaper? And,
well,
and the U.S. dollar's gone down even more.
Right.
And one of the things I always tell clients, are you making your decision based on an emotional lifestyle choice, or is it an investment? But don't confuse the two. And I think what I see, Fanny, is a lot of people making decisions down the States, and they're justifying it, saying, well, I'm going to retire there, or I'm going to live there part of the time. Look, if it's a lifestyle choice, be it Whistler or Palm Desert, wherever, then make a lifestyle choice if it fits your budget. You know what, as far as I'm concerned, today is as good a time as any. If you're going to be living there and enjoying it, live the moment. But don't justify it by saying it's an investment. If it's an investment, do it for study the fundamentals
for investing.
And wait.
A little commercial building somewhere, something like that for investment?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yay,
all
nay.
day long. All day long. If you can get, or even if you can get a sixplex, you know, because right now, it's really interesting that a lot of people watching this should know that it is now easier, that I'm finding it easier to get financing on a sixplex or a 10plex or a 12plex in different cities than it is to get on a rental house, because CMHC is behind it. You have to jump through a couple of extra hoops, but I'm telling you, the cash flow from that can pay for a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place in Palm Desert 6 months of the year.
Well, let's go do that today. Why
Let's
not?
go. Come on, off to the
I'm
shirts.
ready.
Let's go.
Once we beat
we have to wait to beat the
those
Bruins.
That's right.
Once we beat the Bruins, we'll celebrate tomorrow.
There you
Buy
go.
a little building, or maybe 10 little buildings. Who knows?
Let's start with one.
Put a big bet on this game tonight. Are you betting?
Nope, not a betting man. Don't take risks.
I can't bet
Nice
against my
to
Bruins.
see
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Pleasure
very
again.
much. Pleasure again. The Canadian Real Estate Action Plan and the 97 tips for Canadian real estate investors.